Spain 6-2 Belgium. It was a complete and utter goal fest. The win, and it was a absolutely ridiculous win, that means they're now through to the knockouts after Portugal failed to beat Italy. That result also means that Belgium have been eliminated. This is 11 goals now in 2 games for the Spanish. The BBC comms team
Do you
was
know
saying
who
that
scored more in 2 games?
Who?
England in 2022.
The first 2 games? Was it the first? Because it was the
No,
seven.
the second 2 games. They scored
Second.
14 goals in 3 games and they didn't concede a single one.
So
Sorry,
it kind of feels
that's
like
slightly off
Spain
topic. Slightly off
are
topic.
gearing up to be probably the winners of the Euros at this stage. They are just absolutely in full force. Yeah, no one saw that coming. God, great prediction there, Chloe. I think someone was saying that it was Spain's biggest win at a Euros tournament ever. To be honest, I wasn't expecting this result. It was such a kind of topsy-turvy game. Complete Spain dominance. I expected the win, but I didn't expect it in the manner that it went down.
Complete Spain dominance, yes. However, that first half, the opening kind of 50 minutes or so, exposed where Spain could be got at.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Belgium had a really good game plan. They were very disciplined in trying to put that game plan out on the pitch, as we expected from them. Good defensively, disciplined defensively, very dangerous on the counter-attack, and have a serious weapon in Justin van Havermaet in set pieces, which we saw. And I think actually Belgium could have had another at least 2 goals, which could have made it a very, very interesting game. It wasn't a game for the lover of defending because no one seemed to give that any credence or value in the game for much of it because...
I like that though, when you have 2 teams who throw the kitchen sink at the attack and it opens the game up completely.
Absolutely. But I think when we talk about Spain dominance, they conceded twice. They had a goal ruled out for offside against them, and 1 or 2 times players from Belgium, more than 1 or 2 times, got in behind, which is a real threat for Spain. So my only concern is that if Spain were coming up against a better side, that they can be got at. And I think the fact that Belgium were able to expose that at times, what happened was by the time we got to kind of, by the time Spain put that 4th goal in and we got to kind of 4-2, I think Belgium really struggled to kind of sustain the game plan, understandably, because it's bloody tiring playing without the ball, and really tiring trying to be shifting constantly, staying super switched on, all of that kind of stuff that seems like basic stuff, but actually you as a player, I'm sure Chloe can attest to, is a very, very difficult thing to do, to be playing that style of football for so long. So I think once it went kind of 4-2, it was a constant kind of glimmer of hope for Belgium. Constantly they were like, oh my God, like, we're in it, we're out of it. We're in it, we're out of it. And, once it was 3-2, they got that, I think it was the goal ruled offside then. Then they got the 4th goal went in almost immediately after Ewlings scored. The timings of the goals were bizarre. It was just like chaotic, you know what I mean? But I just think there was a little chink in the armour, that's all I'd say about Spain, which could be better exposed by better teams.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I was having a look at the stats on this game. Belgium only had 20% of the possession. And what they did with that 20% was so effective. I think, the set pieces, I thought they were effective. I think on the counter, sort of breaking through, attacking at pace, really, really super effective. And I think, bearing in mind they had 4 shots, 3 on target, they were incredibly good chances. So to create even that amount of sort of positivity from the little possession you have, I thought, do you know what, credit to Belgium. And I think they provided such a spicy game. You constantly thought for like quite long periods of time that they were going to get back into it and actually cause like the first biggest kind of like tournament upset. And it would have been huge. If that had gone the other way, that would have been a huge result for them. But yeah, credit to them. I do feel gutted to now we're starting to see sort of teams drop out after only 2 games having been played. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, but I do think that the final 2 goals, the Caldente and the Pina goal, like if you watch them back, the defense were just like, I felt like I could have been part of the team because it just seemed like we all just stood and watched them. Do you know that kind of way? You're like, oh, like a Pina, incredible goal, pinpoint Pina, perfect. But if you're going to stand back and watch her, you can't give a player like that much space to take the ball down, set up, pick her spot, and just like bend it round everybody. So I think, Belgium will be frustrated with those last 2 goals because they would just seem so static in the box. And you just can't do that to teams like Spain. And look, like I said, it's bloody hard. You run ragged. They were so good with the quick passes, the flicks, the back heels to each other, the little triangles they were playing in and around the Belgian defence. But by the time they got to 60 minutes, they couldn't sustain that type of game plan, which I guess is understandable, but I would argue you would like to think better teams could.
Yeah, 100%. I think that will kind of be a little bit of a template of how teams will look to set up against Spain as they progress through the tournament. Like there are, like you said, chinks in their armour. I mean,
Small ones.
small very tiny ones, but ones that can be exposed in the right circumstances. Let's talk a little bit about then Spain's absolute wonder child, Alexia Putellas, obviously returning into major tournament football, scoring 2 and assisting 2 more, earned her second Player of the Match award. I mean, is there anything she cannot do? I feel like she's become again this kind of, I think there's a balance, isn't there, between her and also Aitana Bonmati. I think it kind of feels like those are the ones that people are sort of most excited to see. And when someone like Alexi Putellas delivers that, like in the first 2 games of a tournament, like the crowd go wild. It felt like the crowd exploded every time she even got on the ball.
Yeah, she's the first player to assist 2 and score 2 in a Euros game, I believe, which is pretty impressive. It's lovely to see her what feels like back to her best, because I remember there was scrutiny on her during the World Cup coming back from injury, and was she playing as well as she had, and had we, people are very quick to write off players who've been injured. You've seen it with Vivian Miedema, that they'll never reach their heights again, which I think is just often too quick to say that, and it takes time to come back from injury. And I just think it's lovely to see her back playing, just, I don't know, with her chest out, that kind of way, that confidence, that comfort on the ball. Like, she absolutely belongs here. There's no kind of stress, or she just looks like she's happiest on the pitch, and that's back now. And she's yeah, an absolute weapon for sure.
100%. And also like a massive nod to Bonmati, obviously still returning to fitness from the viral meningitis scare just before the tournament started. She came on at half time, and I mean, she looked amazing in midfield, but I've got to give credit to the midfield as a whole, as a unit, because like they were just so slick, the passing patterns, the triangles they were creating. It became almost unmanageable for Belgium in sections. They weren't having possession of the ball for large sections of the game, and that was due to kind of just how it was almost like a cat and mouse. They were kind of toying with Belgium at points and kind of just waiting and biding their time until the next opportunity, moving their triangles further and further towards goal and then creating those opportunities. But Rach, what did you think of the Spanish midfield? Because it looks bloody frightening.
Obviously superb. I thought Vicky Lopez
Hmm.
is looking more and more at home, like another wonder child. And you can see like where the youth is at times, where maybe the final pass is maybe the wrong one, for example.
Hmm.
And you can see teammates maybe looking up being like, okay, next time that's for me, not for, don't take it yourself, don't take the shot, don't go wide, like, so I think you can see that. But my god, she's so confident. I think we touched on this in the first game as well. I think as well, what the extra level that Spain has gotten to, that perhaps they struggled a little bit in the past, and don't come for me for saying this, but it'd be games where they'd have all that possession and make all those passes and dancing in around the box, and it came to nothing. And actually, I
Hmm.
think now they've got even more. I said this last time again, Esther Gonzalez provides that option to go over the top or provide a long ball or be direct. So it makes it harder for teams to think it's fine, we'll just kind of push them out or keep them out wide. We'll probably be all right if it ends up here. You don't have that option now. There's kind of no safe space for you to push the ball
Hmm.
to with Spain. They've got players who can take it from outside the box. They've now got a player in the box who's an absolute poacher, lethal weapon inside that box. So it's, yeah, you just there's more danger spots, there's less safe spots on the pitch to allow Spain to kind of have the ball. And I think that's kind of giving them that extra edge to just free reign, score goals from everywhere and anywhere. And I think 7 goal scores now they've had across the 2 games, which is pretty incredible.
And I think talking of the threat and the different types of options they do have there, I've got to give a shout out again to Gonzalez. I mean, her scoring that third goal, I mean, that was kind of like almost like defining moment in the game. It was kind of like that felt like the half nail in the coffin that kind of put the game to bed. It was such a
Yeah.
crucial time that it took place as well. But I think you kind of mentioned it before in the last pod, Rach, or the last pod that we talked about Spain, was kind of how she pops up in those pivotal moments and is that sure hand that you know is going to provide and do damage. And once again, she does exactly the same thing. I mean, what did you think of her for this game? Because she was so effective.
I think probably not necessarily more effective or less effective. I think she kind of had a bit more freedom, understandably, in the Portugal game. I thought for a while, Belgium did well trying to deal with her.
Hmm.
I think you're right about that third goal and the timings of the goals. So if you didn't watch the match, the first goal came from Alexia Putellas on the 22nd minute, and Belgium scored in the 24th minute. So, it was probably about 90 seconds between the 2 goals, right? And you kind of thought initially, oh, Spain are now up and running. Here we go. They've got the goal finally, but you could barely breathe, and suddenly Belgium were back in it. And you were thinking, okay, hang on a second, this could be interesting. Paredes scored in the 39th minute. I think for Belgium, if they'd managed to get to halftime at 1-1, it would have been a real coup. But Paredes put Spain back in front in the 39th minute. And when Belgium came back out in the second half, you knew, right, if Spain get the next goal, they're going to run away with it. This is how I was thinking anyway. Yearlings then got the goal in the 50th minute, and you thought, okay, holy shit, they're back in it now. It's 2-2 again. Brilliant.
Mhm.
2 minutes later, again, less than, must have been again 90 seconds. Gonzalez straight down the other end scores a goal. They'd barely finished playing. You'd want to be on it in that friggin' stadium playing the da, 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 da music every time someone scored, because it was like barely the sounds were still lingering in the mountains, and suddenly they had to go again with the button because they bloody scored another goal. So I just found those timings of those goals so interesting. And yeah, you're right. I think the Gonzalez one maybe just kind of deflated Belgium a little bit. They thought, God, we got back into it twice now. We have to go again. And they couldn't go again quick enough before Caldente then got the fourth. And I just think, yeah, it just pushed it then too far out of their hands.
I agree. And obviously, the absolute rampant win by Spain now means that Belgium are out of the competition. Thoughts with Belgium? It's so horrible to see, especially in the second game, these teams start to disappear from the competition, especially when they've shown such promise and kind of given big teams a run for their money. But credit to Belgium, it wasn't to be this year. Second game of this group, Portugal, Italy, 1-1 result. I think this was a very interesting game. It started slowly, burst into life towards the end. It was the 89th minute equaliser from Portugal's Dani Gomes that kept Portugal in the tournament. I mean, Rach, this was such a you kind of constantly felt on the edge of the seat, like, are Portugal going to do it? Are they going to save their skins? Are they going to save themselves from exiting the competition at this stage? And then they do it in the 89th minute. Deservedly so. I mean, they were throwing the kitchen sink at trying to get the goal. They had one ruled out, and it kind of felt like this was the result that was really fair to both teams. I mean, what did you kind of make of it? It was so tense.
Yeah, I mean, the way I observed this match, if you like, was first half in the car on the way home from Thun. Didn't sound the most exciting. Okay, I thought maybe it sounded like Italy were perhaps creating more opportunities with maybe less possession. Let's put it that way. And I'm so glad I got home to watch the second half in full on TV, because that's when it kind of started to come to life. I thought the goal from Girelli was an absolute peach, and definitely up there for me as goal of the tournament so far, particularly from someone like her, 35 years old. You know, there were times you thought maybe she wouldn't be picked in the team again, or she was someone that was kind of slowly not being pushed out of the Italian team, but, you know, a little bit worried for her. And she's out there now playing with such confidence and freedom, like she's 25, you know what I mean? And to score a goal like that in a moment like that was incredible. She was so emotional as well, and it just sparked the game into life. Like, suddenly it was like an electric bolt hit the pitch, and suddenly everyone was like, right, let's go. It's go time. And Portugal really put the pressure on. Yeah, I thought Diana Silva had nicked it for them. And you'd start to think that, I think how they got that goal, 'cause it was the 83rd minute, I think. You might actually have thought that they could then turn this game around and maybe go on and win it, actually. But yeah, it was ruled offside. And I remember when they showed the clip of the offside, I was like, here, if Beth Mead was offside, that was definitely offside. If this isn't given, we riot.
I think they keep showing the VAR, and it's like a hand or a fingertip or like a fingernail that's kind of like or a toe. And just like, I don't like, sometimes I'm just like, I don't actually know how they're, because it doesn't seem very consistently applied in some cases. I don't get it, but I can't
And
keep
also,
going.
Wimbledon has shown us that there are errors in technology, and there are degrees of errors as well. And I think if you're going to come down to literally measuring someone's toenail, like, you know, there are degrees of errors. We saw the Wimbledon one where it basically, it had been called in and it was out by about 4 inches. Do you know what I mean? So you put all this reliance on technology, and then when you look at it and you can't see it, it's very frustrating. But she was definitely offside in this case.
100%. I think this is the game that I also want to give a bit of a shout out to the keepers. I think like both the Italian and the Portuguese keeper absolutely some outstanding saves that kind of kept their teams in the competition sort of like throughout the game. But yeah, I mean, like there were point blank saves. There were saves off that there was like tipping onto the bar. There was tipping over the bar. There was like, this was goalkeeper goalkeeping at its very finest, so definitely take a look at that. I think another controversial moment in the game, Anna Borges sent off for a second booking in the 5th minute of added time after pushing Bonansé into the advertising hoardings. This was not
Did you
okay.
think? But the way it's being reported is that she pushed her into the hoardings. They came shoulder to shoulder at the line, clashed, and then like the momentum, she rolled off the pitch and into the hoardings. It's not like she just shoved her into the hoardings. They were both going for the ball. I don't know. I think some people think it was a bit harsh to get a yellow card for, but I guess when people keep saying she was pushed into the hoardings, I think for me it felt like the card came from the aftermath of the push. It was almost like she saw what happened to Bonansea and was like, "Oh, that's a yellow card," as opposed to booking for the actual shoulder to shoulder.
No, see, I saw it differently. I saw it. I don't know if you've had a chance to catch up on the replays, but it was they are going shoulder to shoulder, and obviously there is a bit of feistiness. They are kind of like going like at it, but at the same time there is that kind of shove from Budget. Like she does lean into her quite significantly, and I think if you're in that position on the pitch, the only way to go is inevitably into the hoardings. I think it was unsafe given the area of the pitch, and like she should have known better.
For me, there
So
hasn't
I
been
back it.
consistency over stuff like that. You know, I think in refereeing, there hasn't been consistency where those kind of things happen and they're not given, and then they can be given, and then they can be frees or they can be bookings, and then they're not. So, again, I thought there were some refereeing decisions that surprised me in that game as well. It's a little bit of a frustration at this level, I think. But needless to say, like, they did get the goal back, we should say, because she was sent off after the equaliser, right? So they'd already equalised. A wonderful goal. Again, Portugal really putting the foot down and playing with some serious intensity, which I think is something they should try and dig out a little bit earlier in matches. But a wonderful goal to kind of equalise. Just, yeah, losing her at that time is not ideal because now you've got this big important match coming up and she's not available.
I agree. And talking of which, Italy have 4 points and Portugal have 1. Portugal will need to beat Belgium comprehensively and hope that Italy lose to Spain. I love this part of the pod where we're now having to like figure out what could happen, the ifs and the buts and the maybes, and like the goal difference. And if this happens and this happens, it's contingent upon this.
I kind of feel like a bit of an idiot because I never realised that it was head to head first before goal difference,
That
which
is
just always feels a bit like meh to me. I always feel like goal difference is a better way to go first rather than head to head, because then that only comes down to one game rather than like what you've done across multiple games. But yeah, I just never fucking realised, which just says a lot about me. Sorry.
No, I think it's UEFA and their inability to actually develop clear and concise rules or apply them consistently. So, Rach, I don't think that's
Consistent.
on you at all,
Consistent.
actually. Oh, Rach, it's squeaky bum time. England versus the Netherlands tomorrow night. Obviously, we're a couple of days on now from the defeat. Everyone's kind of settled. Everyone's still processing. We talked a little bit about this just before the pod started on kind of what the reaction has been to that defeat, because I think in the moment, obviously, there was like a little bit of shock and a little bit of reeling and a little bit of like, okay, let's pick this apart. What's actually happened here? But Rach, what have you kind of seen that's the biggest narratives, I suppose, around why that defeat took place in the manner that it did?
For me, it's a lot of hindsight, which I think
Mhm.
is a wonderful thing, because at the end of the day, like people saying team selection was wrong, this player should have started, this should have happened. And I think part of me is like, well, no one expected the majority of the team to have a bad day. You can't foresee that, right? Like any other day, that starting 11 will do well against France, will be able to put up a better fight against France. So this idea that anyone could have predicted that kind of performance from England is BS, in my opinion. I don't think you could have predicted all of them to pretty much have a shocker at the office. So that's the first thing. It feels like the narrative is just, well, England need to play better, which, no shit. And for me, a little bit of, it's almost like the talk is about the team that everyone wants the team that could have, should have gone out and been better and played against France to then go out and play against the Netherlands. And France and the Netherlands are two different threats to England. So actually, you should be looking at what's the best team to go out and face the Netherlands and deal with the threats, not what team could have beaten France. Do you know that kind of way? I've not seen much saying, here's what England need to do against the Netherlands, here's where the threats are, and here's who could be the best person to deal with that in this position, for example.
No, 100%. And I totally hear that. I think there needs to be sort of more kind of, in-depth analysis of what those particular points are to improve on. But I think at the same time, I kind of do hold a little bit of sympathy for the narratives around just do better. Because I think, like you said, Rach, on their day, they would just do better. They wouldn't make the kind of ridiculous mistakes that we saw, the kind of clumsy defending, the, not watching players run into the box, the, lack of man marking, the kind of ball watching, the allowing players to run in behind you, like all those like basic things that you expect from these absolute world-class players in the England team, they just weren't doing. So it is a case of, well, just do your job, like do the job that you know how to do and that we've seen you do 100 times before. So I think there is kind of some sympathy there, and I think
But also,
there is an
obviously, the
yeah,
the players aren't going to go, let's go
100%.
and play shit again.
Let's do what we did before and expect a different result. No, and
What
I
did
think
Bonaday say? That was the definition of madness.
yes, but I do. Yeah, it is really hard, I think, to pinpoint because it wasn't like I don't think the game plan was particularly like off. I don't think Serena made really bad decisions in the starting 11. I don't think I think there will be maybe personnel changes there. I mean, what do we think Serena will do for the next game? Do we think we're actually going to see different people come in? We obviously praised Michelle Agyemang, Grace Clinton, Chloe Kelly, who all came on obviously as substitutes in the last game. It seems like the question is should they start, but at the same time I wouldn't advocate for yes. I think Michelle Agyemang, no. I think I love the impact that she makes as a very young, hungry player coming on in those kind of final minutes. I think she should have got more time, but I don't think she should start. Grace Clinton, again, a really effective substitute weapon. Chloe Kelly, potentially, but I wouldn't change much of the attacking lineup, to be fair.
So here's the thing, and like some players I've seen getting an awful lot of criticism, and yes, I don't think anyone had a particularly good day at the office. I think some had a worse day at the office than others. I think both fullbacks struggled. I think Georgia Stanway struggled in particular. I've seen a lot about Beth Mead, and I think a lot of people judge her on her attacks forward and what she produces in the box, rather than the fact that she had to her defensive attributes are very, very good, which is often why she might be picked ahead of Kelly against certain teams, because she, for me, provides more defensive cover. She had to come back a lot to cover for Lucy Bronze as well, which then nullifies her threats going forward. I think as well what people kind of forget is what I remember Emma Hayes, I think, was saying on ITV that the centre backs need to help Jess Carter more on that fullback position, which I think, for me, what happens in that situation is if Jess Carter has been done, it pulls Alex Greenwood out to try and cover that, which is what we saw for the first goal, because then Leah Williamson is suddenly left in the box with like three players in a massive amount of space that she can't control on her own. So, you have to look at what bad performances do and force players to do because of maybe players having a bad day, being out of position pulls you then in the wrong place, and you're not then impacting the game the way people expect you to, and if you've got a striker who's constantly being pulled back or constantly having to come back to get the ball, everyone just says they have a bad day, that was a shit game. And like, okay, well, why was that? Did the midfield struggle to actually get the ball forward to the striker? Did they then have to drop? Did their game plan have to shift because of what's going on around them? So for me, that happened to Beth Mead. I don't think she had a brilliant game, but I do think she had to provide an awful lot more defensive cover than perhaps was expected, which then didn't allow her to give much going forward. I agree with you with Michelle Agyemang. There's always this, well, she had a great 5 minutes, so she must start. She's an impact player. She's something that throws defence. They struggle to deal with her directness, with her ball control, with her confidence in the box. That's a weapon you want to be able to have to throw on and kind of throw the cat amongst the pigeons a little bit. It's a bit like having an LJ come off the bench and being able to make that change and that kind of disruption within the other team. And I think that's what Michelle can do off the bench. But yes, should have come on earlier, in my opinion. I do think we might see a change at left back. We might see Niamh Charles starting. She's going to have to deal with that speed down the wings of the Dutch again, but I don't think it's necessarily the same type of opponent as France. And I do think perhaps we'll see a change in midfield, whether we'll see Clinton and Toon start, whether we'll just see Toon start. We shall see. I mean, I thought it was interesting what Georgia Stanway said in the press conference. I'd like to get your thoughts on it, given you're a former player, but she was like, what she found really frustrating was that she just couldn't seem to do what she wanted to do and what she was trying to do, and the ball wasn't doing what she and players have bad days, and I've not played to that level, but I've had it when I've played sport where you just have a shit day and you're like,
Mhm.
why is this happening? And yeah, I'm sure as a goalkeeper you've had that where you're just like, what you're supposed to do, but it's just not happening.
Oh my God, I've had countless of those games. I think there are some days and they normally come weirdly enough after a really good week of training where you feel like in the best position, like everything's been going right, you've been absolutely smashing it, saving goals left, right, and centre, or creating passes or whatever it is, and then you get into a game and for some reason, like your eye hand coordination is off, like the ball just doesn't land in the right way, you don't feel like you've made the right move or you're in the right position or you're just off. But I think what happened in that England game is that every single player kind of had one of those games. I think maybe bar Lauren James, who I don't think really put a foot wrong that game. So I'd be surprised if she actually didn't start again. I think
I don't
good. Do you
I
reckon? I think
think
obviously you
I
had the
just
context
think
there of her just coming back from injury and kind of not wanting to
yeah, and
overplay her, but
I
she
just
was
think
amazing.
that, yeah, she was, but I think because of France's dominance in midfield and her creative ability going forward, at times it just left a little bit of a gap. And I think England needed a bit more robustness in that midfield area. And I guess
Hmm.
that's the thing, right? Like you said, when you have a bad day, you don't necessarily expect everyone else to have a bad day. So you can't hook everyone. Like if you're having a shit day, your manager might go at halftime, right, okay, you're coming off, we're gonna put this person in and, fix the problem. When everyone's playing off their game, it's very, very difficult to just like make one or two tweaks and everything's fine. Like, so I think that was the difficulty as well for Wiegman. People were like, why didn't she make the substitutions at halftime? And if ifs and buts, she made a triple sub at 60 minutes. And I think my only criticism was just making that Michelle Adjumang one a little bit earlier.
100%. I think, well, it's going to be really interesting to see how they line up tomorrow. I think for me, I would still be accepting LJ to be there. I think maybe the switch out with Neve Charles and Jess Carter. But other than that, I think Sassy Reese is going to remain roughly the same. Rach, flagpole in the sand about any changes.
Oh yeah, I think there'll be changes. I want her to go rogue. I want her to do what she did against China and just like three
How
at the back,
rogue.
two up front, three at the back, two up front. Let Bronze and Charles push up, provide a little bit of extra defensive cover with that third kind of centre defender. Put Lauren Hemp and Russo up top. I don't know, fuck around and find out kind of vibes.
So
When you
caution
can't.
to the wind.
Yeah, I think as people have touched, sometimes England can be a bit predictable, and
Mhm.
you know, I kind of disagree in some ways where I think it was actually Millie Bright on her podcast and Rachel Daly saying how predictable Wiegman was. I don't actually think I predicted at 60 minutes these three players are going to come on and these three players are going to come off. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's easy to say after the fact. This isn't Euro 2022 where you could predict down to the minute of who, what, when. I don't think England have been like
Oh, I
that
liked
for that
knowing.
long.
I
Yeah,
like. I
but I
liked
don't.
that.
This idea that that's still the same situation, I think, isn't really the case. But I'm glad, like I said, glad she made the 60-minute substitutions, and I guess this is a make or break game. So if things aren't going the right way, changes will need to be made quicker, and she'll have to roll the dice. And I think she did show a bravery going to a back three with Alex Greenwood coming off for Michelle
Mhm.
Adjumang, but there's that timing of that bravery, if needed, is going to have to be sooner.
I think it's that, isn't it? How kind of risk adverse is Serena Wiegman going to be in this game? Or do you just put your cards on the table, throw everything at it, and just try something completely new to create magic? So we will absolutely wait and see. Obviously, this game is absolutely pivotal in terms of getting back on track tomorrow night. England could be eliminated if they lose, and France avoid defeat against Wales. Similarly, Wales will be eliminated if they lose to France, and the Netherlands avoid defeat against England. Essentially, this game is the game to rule all games in terms of figuring out what's happening with our tournament chances. Tonight, we obviously have Germany versus Denmark and Poland versus Sweden. Germany and Sweden are both on 3 points. They'll go through if they win, and the other of them avoids defeat. Do we think there's a chance that Poland could spring a cheeky surprise? Rach, you've been so impressed with them this tournament. Do we think actually this could be the little upset that you actually could be predicting?
I hope so, because I'm doing that game. I'd quite like to. I'd quite like to capture Poland's first goal at a major tournament. That would be lovely.
Yeah.
I think what they did with Germany shows the threats that they have. I'm hoping that Eva Payor not scoring will light something underneath her because she'll think she could have had two or three.
Mhm.
And I think Germany arguably are better than Sweden. So I think they'll take from that, if we can do this against Germany, you know, we can hurt Sweden. Equally, Sweden are defensively pretty good as well, but you know, I think sometimes can be shy in front of goal. Maybe this is the game they'll prove me wrong and not be shy in front of goal. But yeah, if Poland are going to score, just I'm putting it out there, if they could do it in the first half, because that's the end I'm shooting, I'd really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Love that. I'll definitely give them the nod through none
Yeah.
of the contacts that I have in the Polish Federation.